And good morning to everyone. And you who are listening in online or at home, I can see you as you see me. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Hare Krishna. We've just had a very nice festival for Lord Balaram's appearance day. That was pretty good, wasn't it? And there was dynamite prasadam prepared. It was really, really good. Thank you so much. I know that some of you are getting ready to go to jobs, go to school, take care of kids, do all kinds of things. So if you happen to be listening in and watching on your phone or on the TV, then I'm very pleased to have you here with me. Most people on the planet know me now by the name Rupanuga. I'm a disciple of His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj and a grand disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Nitai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bo Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Charja Asto Tarasata Sri Srimad His Divine Loving Grace Abhoye Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Guru Parampara Ki Shri Rup Shri Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Sad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Charja Asto Tarasata Shri Srimad His Divine Loving Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se ko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki. Shri Mathura Dham ki. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki. Shri Shri Radha Kalachanji Dham ki. Ganga Devi ki. Jamuna Mai ki. Tulsi Devi ki. Bhakti Devi ki. Samavita Bhakta Vrinda ki. Briyabhadanga Transcendental Book and Transcendental Prasadam Distribution ki. Nitai Gaura Premananda. Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Vishnaye Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavati Pachani Nivishesha Shinyavati Pastatyadesh Tarini. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Yasan Tato Jayam Udirayat Nasta Preshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Attama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Rantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Today, I want to talk a little bit about understanding Krishna's purpose, and this is going to be based on Bhagavad Gita and not Srimad Bhagavatam. Speaker's choice, as they say. So, of course, there will be other literatures we might call into play also. So we understand that Krishna is in control of the entire universe. And not only this universe, but a lot of other universes as well. I have not been able to wrap my tiny little brain around that idea. But he's explaining to Arjuna, Sri Arjuna, at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita in 2nd chapter. And I'd like to quote from text number 12 in chapter 2. Natve baham jatu nasham natvam neme janadipa nachaiva na bhavishyama sarve bhayam atha param. Anybody know what that verse is? What's the English translation? Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So first of all, Krishna is telling, not first of all, he's already spoken some things to Arjuna, because Arjuna is really kind of down in the mouth, so to speak. He's looking out there across the battlefield and seeing all kinds of honorable, respectable, worshipable people that he is responsible for killing. And so we wonder what does Krishna have in mind? Does he permit this or what? We'll talk about that a little bit. Chapter 2, text number 20. Najayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavita va nabhuya ajo nitya shasvato yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. What is that? For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being. We used to say this in a different way when this was translated by someone else, but I think it was a good change that was made. For the soul there is never birth nor death, nor having once been does he ever cease to be. So that called into a possible question in some people's minds that there might have been a time that he did not exist. For having once been, he never ceases to be. So this, I think, is a little more correct according to the meaning. For the soul, there's neither birth nor death, or at any time. No, he has not come into being. He does not come into being, and he will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. This is a big claim for someone to make, but who's making the claim? Krishna. Krishna is making the claim. He's saying, and we know that Krishna is also Satchit Ananda. He's eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. And he's saying here that the soul shares that quality of eternality with him. So, okay, so we're finding out something about Krishna's control of the universe. That's what we're talking about here. Then, so he's the origin of all the living entities. He is the source, which would make us think in our way of thinking about this material world, that at some point in time, the living entities, like people, like us, came into existence, but we had not existed before. But Krishna refutes that. He says, in effect, what he is saying is that just as I have always existed, so all the living entities within this material world and within the spiritual world have always existed. So the element of time comes into play whenever the living entity wanders haplessly, wanders into the material world and checks it out, just to check it out. I've heard it said that the living entities were originally in the spiritual world. Then that's called into question too by some people. They say that some living entities were never existing in the spiritual world, because how could they fall? How could they fall down from the spiritual world? But we've heard explanations by those who are much farther advanced than we are, that the living entity did exist in the spiritual world, and it's only a little bit of a lapse in consciousness that makes him think that he's in the material world. Some people have said that the living entity is talking with his friends, and they say, "Oh, what's that light over there?" And they see a light coming from somewhere else, and someone says, "That's Krishna's material energy. You don't want to fool with that." And so the living entity thinks about it and becomes a little bit wondering about it, and would like to know, what is that spirit, what is that material world? How is it different from the world that we live in? I think I'd like to go just check it out. I'd just like to see what's there, and I'll come right back. And so he does. And so he lets his consciousness, and the moment he does that, Krishna's material energy cooperates with him and allows him to go into that material world And one of the first things that he does is he gets covered over by a material body, mind, and intelligence. And he gets this gross material body to deal with. And so he finds himself performing activities there, but we know that it is the nature of the living entity. He shares one of the qualities of the Supreme Lord, and that is Ananda. He's ever blissful, or in his normal state, he's very blissful. And so wherever he goes then, he is wanting some pleasure, some enjoyment, because that's what he has come from, and that's what he is accustomed to. So he goes, and then he gets this material body, and then he starts looking around. How do I enjoy myself? What am I supposed to be doing here? And of course, Durga Devi, the keeper of the prison house, makes all the arrangements for the living entity to try to find lasting happiness. At first, it's just, I'm interested in happiness, and then he finds out that the happiness there is very temporary. It comes, but there's always the concomitant misery that goes with it. And so he's found himself in a very difficult situation. So how is this that Krishna permits the living entities to go out of the spiritual world into the material world just to check it out? And we know that Krishna has given us free will. And why do we have free will? Because we want to have our own pleasure. But Krishna wants us to be able to exercise the decision whether to love and serve him at his original abode, Vaikuntha, or whether he's going to let the living entity come into this material world, which is not what Krishna prefers. But when the living entity has his own free will, he can choose to come into this material world. And so that's what happens. So Krishna states a little bit further on in the Bhagavad Gita that everyone follows my path in all respects. So let me look at that. This is Bhagavad Gita 4:11. Ye yata mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham mama vartman vartanta manusyam partha sarvasa. And the translation to that text, that's text number 4, chapter 4, text number 11 in the Bhagavad Gita. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. And who is Pritha? Arjuna, the son of Pritha. Who is, what's another name for whom? Kunti. So Pritha. And Pritha, just like Draupadi is sometimes called Krishna. So Pritha. And then, everybody follows Krishna's path in all respects. So does Krishna's path also include, and sometimes extreme suffering? And the fact is, that's not his desired path for us, but that is a path which he allows us to pursue. Are we getting punished by Krishna for making bad choices? There are laws that we have to obey. Just as in our present society, we can't just do anything and everything that we want to, especially if it causes harm to someone else. So we know that not only is Krishna exceedingly powerful, and that he is the source of everything including the material energy, which is separated by consciousness from the spiritual energy of the Vaikunthas. We know him also to be just. So whenever we perform an activity, whether it seemed to be good or bad in this material world, Krishna is always providing justice. If we decide to perform some activity that is harmful to our most, we can say it's our most precious gift of Krishna, and that is this human form of life. If Krishna is just, then he allows us in this human form to perform activities which are not in keeping with the laws that have been set down for living in this material world. And so then there is suffering involved. Does Krishna like to see us suffer? Of course not. He's like a father to us. He is our father, the seed-giving father. And so he does not want us to have to suffer. But we find that in this material world, there is a lot of suffering, and there are disasters that can remove us, the living entities, from this material world. Just a few to name. I don't want to go into too much of that because it makes it seem as though the devotees are always talking about how bad this material world is. And even though it might be true, people get tired of hearing that. So let's just mention briefly wars in the Battle of Kurukshetra, in which setting this Bhagavad Gita has been spoken by Krishna to Arjuna. 640 million men killed in the scope of 18 days. Impossible for us. And anybody who hears that cannot believe that, first of all, you can assemble 640 million people together on a battlefield with simple weapons. Of course, we know that there are some exotic weapons that are sometimes used, but for the normal persons, it's an axe or a sword or something, and so that took out a lot of people. More recently, coming up to date, the civil war in this country. Did you know that it was in that war, the Civil War, that more Americans were killed than in all other wars since then, in any wars that have taken place? And I can't remember how many it was. The number 240,000 comes to mind. 240,000. And that doesn't sound like very much, because we know that in war that came after that, World War I and II, that there were millions of persons killed. As a matter of fact, in World War II, part of the reactions that were taken by people came when Hitler performed the Holocaust and murdered 6 million, as I understand it, 6 million persons of the Jewish race, Jewish community, Jewish religious background. 6 million people. And of course, there were many more millions. There were quite a few more millions that were killed in the actual battle. But these were apparently innocent people, women, children, old people, that were not carrying weapons. They were just herded up and taken to a place and killed by poisoning them with a poison gas. And so, Krishna, where were you? How did you let this happen? To these innocent people. So, as devotees of Krishna, and based on the knowledge that we have, we know that nobody who comes into this material world, or is forced to come into this material world, is innocent. They have been here before, many, many lifetimes, many different forms, 8,400,000 species of life, of which 400,000 have been human. And they've been through all of those. We have been through all of those. And so we're just coming back for another birth in this world. So how is it that Krishna is just if he permits that to happen? Because of our own activities. That's the answer. And that's an answer that not many people want to accept, because there are natural disasters such as tornadoes and floods and tsunamis and pandemics in which so-called innocent people die. We've recently had the terrible flood in Texas, and it took away, I think it seemed like it was 32 young people, very young people. And we could say innocent young people, and a lot of adults too, who was taken away. And I've seen recently on I think on Facebook, where there was a mud slide that took down. Has anybody else seen that? It was a mudslide that came through and took a whole village down where it was a course. It was following the course of a river. And I guess there must have been I don't know what, a volcanic eruption or something that caused snow melt. And when that happens, then there's a lot of dirt that gets mixed in with it, and you can have a big mudslide. So just as we had a big water flood in this country recently, so there was a big mudslide in some part of India, and I can't remember exactly where it was. But a lot of people lost their lives in that too. And not only in Texas was there a water flood, a flood due to a really strong downpour of water, something like 10 to 12 inches within a short amount of time. That's hard to imagine, that much water coming down. But also in North Carolina, similar thing happened. The floods took away villages, took away people and property, and all these things. Krishna, where are you? Why are you permitting these things to happen? And Krishna says, you made the choice to come into this material world. You made the choice to injure other living entities and perform all kinds of sinful activities, not in accordance with the laws that I put in place for this country. You did this to yourself, and now you're suffering the results. So, it's a very painful thing for us to hear about. And that's one of the downsides of having international media that tell us what's going on in other parts of the world. Before this past, the latter part of this past century, we were quite limited in how quickly and how much information would come to us. But now that we're in a situation in which that information can come to us, it's almost overwhelming. If you've ever watched the national news on television in the evenings around 5:30, and I do occasionally, I want to see what's happening. Then you come away, you almost need to pop a pill or smoke a joint or have a drink of liquor to ease the pain, the stress, the distress that you feel, knowing that in another country at this moment there are hundreds, maybe thousands of children who are suffering from starvation because of another country has decided to produce or perform retribution for something else that happened to it. So everybody's getting back at the other person who is causing distress. And so that's we might think, well, this happens on a national level. Why does Krishna permit that to happen to so many people? But we understand that every single person who is suffering at any time on this planet is doing so only because of something that person has done in a previous lifetime. There is such a thing as regional or national karma, or there are places and times in which there's been a volcanic eruption, mudslides, they take out a whole village. Then you have the disaster that was man-made happening in Bhopal, India, several years ago, in which Union Carbide Corporation, I believe it was, and a big plant they had there was a fault, and it released an enormous amount of gas, poisonous gas, and wiped out an entire community, something like 30,000 people overnight had to give up their bodies. How does that make us feel? It makes us wonder, is there a God? Is he permitting all of this to happen? Well, we know by what we have learned in Krishna consciousness, and it does not only does the Lord permit that, but he arranges it. He allows persons like Adolf Hitler and Stalin, Joseph Stalin, and so many others. He allows to come into this world. He empowers them. It's almost like saying Saktivesh Avatar, but I don't like to use that term with regard to a dictator who's responsible for the killing of millions of people. And yet, so Krishna not only allows that living entity who wants that power, the power of a Hitler or Stalin, he allows them to have the power, and he also makes all the arrangements that they will get elected into a position of power, so that, as Hitler did, it could almost conquer the world. He had such a war machine. But Krishna stopped it. He allowed us, the United States, to intervene there, and but he did not stop the United States from having many of its ships bombed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. So I started out the class by saying that I didn't want to spend too much time focusing on the bad stuff. But the point I wanted to make is that it's not like Krishna could not do something that is happening automatically in this material world. It is not happening automatically. It is arranged by the material laws which Krishna has set in place. So we cannot say that Krishna, he must not be powerful enough to alter all the situations that are causing misery to people in this material world. He must not be powerful enough. This material energy that we're dealing with here, how could one person be in control of that in this universe? But what people don't know is that it's going on all over the universe, this universe, and there are unlimited numbers of material universes that are present right now in this whole world that Krishna has established. And Krishna is in control of every single tiny little activity that happens to the living entity, even if it's a cockroach or a bed bug or a flea or a tick. He is in that body with the living entity who shares that body. And he is making all arrangements for that living entity's pleasure and also for its punishment. So this is Krishna. There are all kinds of medical problems like birth defects, and there's dietary illnesses and hereditary illnesses and environmental things that go on that also cause suffering. Now, what's the reason? Reactions from previous births. That's a tough sell. If you try to present this knowledge to someone else, especially someone who is at this moment suffering in some way or other, either financial, medical, they got children that are suffering, they got parents that are old and ready to give up their bodies, as some of us are. But these things are going on, and they're coming about by the fact that we chose to come into this material world just to check it out, and somehow or other we got lost in it. And so now we're having to tolerate all the difficulties. So acting out of ignorance of Krishna's laws, that's one way that people, well, most people, we can say, that's the way most people get into a suffering position. And the more they try to find relief, the more they try to find enjoyment in this material world. Again, if you watch a little television, and I don't recommend it so much, but you can glance at it every now and then just to see what's happening. They've got young men and young women just positioning themselves as though they're the controllers of their destiny, and this world is meant for their enjoyment, and they are fortunate enough to have gained birth in a family that has provided them with this beautiful, strong, powerful body. And so this is the kind of thing you see on television. This is what is being marketed to people everywhere, because this is what people want. They want to enjoy, and they see these people are enjoying. But if you follow the lives of those persons who become very famous all over the world, that they have what seems like unlimited wealth, and they have unlimited enjoyment, and they've got all the trappings of the successful man or woman, and you can see that later on it comes back to get you. And everybody has to tolerate that suffering, but you don't hear too much about this. But you might hear something about a Clint Eastwood or a person like that, or a person that has been very famous in the past and has starred in so many movies, and you think that life is a peach for him, but it's not so. And a young woman who was beautiful enough to become a princess of one of the persons that was in line to become the King of England. What was her name? Princess who died in the automobile? Diana. Beautiful, beautiful girl, and such a nice, pleasant personality. And so, I mean, how many instances like that can we think of that are present here in this material world, even at this time when we're experiencing a little bit of happiness, a certain amount of suffering throughout our lives, and for anybody then who tries to come into Krishna consciousness here into this community. Almost every person or every couple that has come in here, as far as I know, has had to go through some kind of test. And I've mentioned this to several of you because we see that happening. I had a 3-month-old son that gave my wife and me a very powerful test, and I failed it. But my spiritual master reached out and brought me back. So how do we go about avoiding and minimizing our suffering? All right, first thing for us is learning about spiritual life from advanced spiritualists. We ran into someone that gave us a copy of a book, or we paid a few bucks for a book or something, or we somehow or other took some prasadam at a Sunday feast. And who is it that founded the Apple Corporation? What was his name? No, not Bill Gates. That's Microsoft. Who is it? Anybody remember? He recently gave up his body not too long ago. Yeah. Jobs, yeah. Steve Jobs, yes, thank you. Steve Jobs, nice guy. And he came to all kinds of realizations toward the end of his life. But one of the things that he remembers doing is walking quite a large distance while he was in school to be able to go to the Sunday feast of the Hare Krishnas. So, pardon? In Oregon, Portland? So isn't that interesting? Steve Jobs, probably one of the wealthiest men on the planet. And now we've got Elon Musk. I think, have I got his name correct? Elon Musk, who's a multi-billionaire, so much opportunity for enjoyment in this world. But the greater the enjoyment, the more difficult are the reactions that come from it. You know that? So we take alcohol, we take drugs in order to make us feel good, make us enjoy being with the opposite sex. And so what happens? It comes down on us, doesn't it? So one way that we can avoid suffering is to avoid persons who act in ignorance. And Prabhupada has told us that we should not told us men that we should not be in the association too much of a person who is overly attracted to women, and more than just one woman, more than just his wife. So that's acting ignorance. And so there's a lot of ignorance in this world. But you know, if you go to any Christian church practically in this country, you will hear people saying that we have a bunch of very pure souls here. You know, we have these are innocent people who are coming to our church. And at the same time, then you have someone coming into the church with an automatic weapon and taking out some people. Happens in elementary schools too, doesn't it? So how can we, there are people who are steeped in ignorance right now, and a lot of these people who are taking action like that against other people, causing them to suffer, causing their relatives to suffer, if they're, you know, relatives that have small children in school, and they get blown away by some crazy guy. You know, it's just a matter of ignorance. So much ignorance there. So what do we do about it? We share knowledge, because the only way we understand for us to get ourselves out of this material world is to take up with the knowledge that comes from those advanced spiritualists whom we've had the good fortune to come into contact with. But just hearing the knowledge is not enough. We have to put it into practice. And what really will get us out of this material world is to share that knowledge with other people, isn't it? So Prabhupada was very much insistent on that, wasn't he, Mr. Bhagwan Prabhu? Insisted on sharing, and Mr. Bhagwan Prabhu has probably distributed more books than anybody here in this community right now. Has his life been perfect? We'll let him say about that. But the fact is that he's taken to the service of a pure spiritual master, and he's willing to share the knowledge that he's gotten by distributing literature, talking with people that come. And this is one thing that I've been a little bit reluctant to do, or maybe and that is to, whenever there's a special program at the temple, my spiritual master said he could not understand how people in this community could stay at home when there's an opportunity to come and preach to people who have come here looking for something. And it's not like going out and distributing books to the general mass of people. You get a lot of rejections there, don't you, Mr. Bhagwan Prabhu? A lot of rejections. But here, you got people coming and sitting and waiting for someone to come and tell them about Krishna consciousness. And Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, he said that he's in his lectures, and I've been listening to these lectures, that he cannot understand why people would stay at home instead of coming over here and making themselves available. And I find that it's one of the most pleasurable experiences that I feel so recalcitrant because I'm not doing it. And that is to go to a feast of some kind, or just to be in the communication, sitting outside in the park on the bench and having other people around, and finding out people, what their lives are like, and how much Krishna consciousness. Sometimes you will find people that have been in Krishna consciousness as long as you have been, if not longer. And other times there are people who don't really know too much at all. And in either case, you can share something with them. And Tamal Krishna Goswami encouraged his disciples and other people in our community to do that, because we've been given a very valuable gift. And if we don't share it with other people, then we're known as misers. We've got something of value that we can freely give to other people. It doesn't cost us a dime to go and talk to people who come here. Nothing. It costs us nothing. And if you have an appetite, like most of you do, you're younger than I am. I don't have much appetite. But you can also get some really nice food here in the form of Krishna Prasadam. So showing compassion to all living entities is one of our main activities in life, showing compassion to other living entities, because we have a good reason for doing that, and that is because somebody else has shown compassion to us. At a time when my wife and I first came here and we stayed for about 5 months, we left. And nobody seemed to really notice that we'd left. I've mentioned this before. And we went away for some time, but while we were gone, our spiritual master sent a messenger over to us and asked us to write to him, so we did. And he responded to both of our letters. We wrote individual letters to him. And just by his writing to us and giving us some encouragement, we came back. That's what I call compassion, because nobody else had that kind of desire for us to come back here. We were more trouble than we were worth. And yet our spiritual master saw something there, saw something of value there, like finding a little tiny flake of gold in the midst of a lot of rubble, just a speck of gold. So if we can do that ourselves, then we might just possibly help other people come to the same place of finding some relief from all of this suffering that is going on. So what else do we have besides relief from suffering to offer? Vaikuntha, Krishna Loka, Goloka, Gokul. A place where there is eternal enjoyment. And what knowledge do people have about that? Christians, if they've been pretty good practitioners, they have learned that there is some heaven somewhere, and they think it's within this one universe because they think that this one universe is unlimited in size. We know it's 4 billion miles in diameter. Do you remember that? It's talked about in the 5th canto. And not only is it a place to come and try to find pleasure, but it's a place to come and get relief from the suffering that we have experienced in many, many lifetimes. So what can we do then? We can help to give the understanding to other people that the activities that you're presently performing have reactions to come with them. And that's what's keeping you coming back again and again and again into this material world. So let's get the heck out of here. Let's leave. Get your bags packed and get ready to go. As a matter of fact, your bags should be packed all the time. Of course, I didn't know this when I was younger, but we understand that we might have one moment to live, like this king, this powerful king who used to fight with the demigods. And then he came back to this material, to this earth, and he had one request to make, and that is, how much longer do I have in this lifetime? And he was told, you have one moment. So even after having such a magnificent life of having power and being able to fight with the demigods against the demons, his departure came in a moment, and so he was able to take advantage of that and make further progress. So what is the best thing that we can do? Chapter 18. Na cha tasman manusyeshu kaschin me priya kritama bhavita na chame tasmad anya priya taro bhuvi. That's actually the second verse. I want to give you another verse first. Ya idam paramam guyam mad bhatesh vabi vidasyati Bhaktim Mai Param Kritva Mam Evaisyatya Samsaya. Okay, translation. For one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end, he will come back to me. So, who is that to the devotees? I guess that's us. At least we're trying to be, aren't we? So so then he says in that next text, there is no servant in this world more dear to me than he. That's the person who explains this this supreme secret to other people. There will never, he says, there is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. So we got some wealth here. We got some wealth here in this philosophy that Srila Prabhupada has so kindly denied himself the pleasures of being a grandfather and staying around bouncing his grandkids on his knees during the latter part of his life. No. He even gave that up and went to a place that some would call a pretty bare facility there in Vrindavan. What's it, Radha Damodar? Yeah, that little room. If you've seen that room, you could it's hard to understand how a person could be satisfied to be there. Well, Prabhupada was not satisfied to be there because his spiritual master had told him to go and give this knowledge to the English-speaking world. And so he gave up so much to come, just to come here and give us this knowledge. And now what's he expecting us to do with it? Give it to somebody else. So we have to really appreciate those persons that have come before us. It's like not Shakespeare. It's like Beethoven saying about, when the people, glorified him on the basis of his symphony orchestras that he composed, symphony compositions. He said, "You may call me great, but I'm actually standing on the shoulders of geniuses, of giants." That's what he said. He says, "I'm standing." So we are like that too. We're standing on the shoulders of giants who have preceded us in this movement. The original ones that came and served Srila Prabhupada in the beginning and gave this knowledge to the suffering masses, which included us. And we found out that the suffering did not end just because we came here to this community. As a matter of fact, for some of us, it increased phenomenally. And yet, by the help of other people, we somehow or other got through it. And now we're enjoying the results of what others have produced. This community, this wonderful building that we're in, and these beautiful deities that we have on the altar here. We have wonderful facility, and Srila Prabhupada would be very pleased if we just use it. Hare Krishna. You do what? Can you hear him? If you can speak loud enough, then he will understand and he will relay it to me.
The different memory series of Srila Prabhupada that Siddhanta Prabhu has spent many years compiling. And I was listening to one particular one, Jai Pataka Maharaj, when he was young, was mentioning how Srila Prabhupada has said that, it isn't expected that all the devotees will live in the temple, that actually they will be many householders will be at home, and they will be worshiping the deity at home. So, I think that's what we see in our extended congregation. Many, many devotees, if you've been up to any programs up in Frisco or Plano or so many programs going on, these wonderful devotees are, worshiping their deities at home gloriously. They're doing their duty, they're maintaining their families, but they're worshiping their deities. And so, actually, Jayapataka, when Prabhu Maharaj, when he heard this, he said, this was very inspiring to me because he was developing, that was his mission for so many years, developing extended congregational preaching, understanding. So he really embraced this realization, this prophecy, if you will, that this would be the future, and here it is. This has been our future. So I just wanted to comment on that. And also, just another quick comment. You mentioned all the catastrophes going on in the world, and many of you know Apurva and Kamalini that served here for many years. She would give amazing Bhagavatam classes. He was cooking for Kalachandjis. And she had got up at Mangalarti, maybe some of you are aware of this, and it was pitch dark, there was no electricity, and as she was going over what she thought was a little puddle, it was a tumultuous river that engulfed her car, and
You're speaking of Kamalini Devi?
Kamalini Devi. And the car began to sink, and she had the wherewithal to put the window down before the electricity went out in the car because of the water, and she was engulfed with water. Now, she's 70 years old. The water poured in, but somehow or another she got out of the car, crawled in the pitch dark to found the shore, and then went and was walking, and here she saw a home in the pitch of the night, and dogs were barking, and when she went into that home, a woman was awake and invited her in, gave her a hot shower, gave her clothes, and so it was just one of those amazing stories. Actually, she told the story herself. So here it is, we have the example of Stalin withholding wheat and grains where millions and millions of people died in Ukraine. This was many, many years ago. Millions starved. He starved them all, taking all the grains. So, and then you have the situation where this devotee, we were mentioning so many tragedies, so many people, the children that died in that Christian, had been around, I think, from the 30s. And then you have this situation with this devotee that had the same thing, and somehow or another, she felt Krishna saved her to continue on in her service. So there was just a few comments, you can respond to, if you like. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mother Nandini. Yeah, the story about Mother Kamalini is very amazing. And a woman in her 70s escaping through the window of her car and being washed away almost by the river. But she was able to survive and come back. She's been a big book distributor for all her life. And her husband is Apurva Prabhu. Yeah, he's been an amazing cook for many, many years. Krishna is taking care of his own. Anything else that anyone would like to add?
Not to add, Prabhu. Thank you for the class. I have a question.
Here, take this.
Nandini Mataji, I was appreciating your point of Jayapataka Maharaj mentioning that so many of us in these days will have our deities at home. And I would like to add to that Jayapataka Maharaj started the Namahat program. And because he knew this, and so his from what I understand, is his thought was that the temple wasn't a place let's say, the temple was meant to reach out to people to give them Krishna consciousness. And so if we can understand that our temples at home are meant to connect people with Krishna, we can see how each one of us have a circle of influence that's different than the others. We have so many people that go out to work in different places that are touching people's lives that this temple can't even touch. To be honest with you, like, they would never come to this temple, but you do. You have an opportunity to touch them and bring them to your home and feed them prasadam and just cultivate friendships with them. It wasn't meant to So I was thinking about that, we can imagine that this is International Society Krishna Consciousness can have 200 million temples that are all touching people's lives in different ways. It's quite an amazing thought. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. Prabhu, you talked a lot on suffering today. And my question was, we understand from Bhagavad Gita about three cause of suffering, right? And this material world is dukkhale shashvatam. We understand all of it, but at points where we feel like there's so much. There's so much suffering, like you mentioned, right? Like we talked about the war, people's life, and even I experienced that in devotees' life. And I mean, I'm not apart from that. Like, you feel like, why? I mean, it's just too much to take it. And although Krishna has made a point that this is the only human form of life where you can get out of the material world, even the demigods desiring this human form of life so that they can also go back to Godhead. But at the same time, in other species of life, we know they don't have intelligence, but we do not experience their suffering. I mean, they might be suffering, but we don't know. It seems like they have a better life, if I may say that. Like, they get up on a time, they have their schedule, they do things appropriately, but we as a human are really, really miserable.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in this human form, aren't we? Anything else? All right. Thank you all very much for being with us today. All you at home, I'm looking at you again, and I'm hoping that you have a really good day, and you've used this morning, a part of this morning, to get your spiritual batteries charged, and we're pleased that you were here with us. So, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Radha Kalachandridam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha. Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai.